Hi guys, it's Renee and welcome back to my channel, and today we are, I don't even want to say hopefully, we're finishing ErHa Volume 7 today. I'm very nervous because Mipan does have a tendency to end on somewhat cliffhanger-ish moments, and this entire volume so far has been a little bit of emotional torture, so I don't know how much further she's gonna push me before the end of the volume. I am honestly very nervous about it. We have 45 pages left to read, so I do want to basically more or less just get to it as soon as possible, but also just allow some people to make their way here if they're getting the notification that we are on. Quick, if you're new here, hi, I'm Danae. I read Danmei, currently busy with Husky and his white cat Shizun, Volume 7. Hi! And we take breaks on the hour. Usually we stream for 3 hours, but today and Wednesday we are streamed for 2 hours, so it's only going to be one tea break for me to just stretch, get new sustenance, and then come back. And yeah, one thing that I have been meaning to find is a trigger warning list, because as far as I'm aware, most of my viewers have already read this book and then come and basically do a reread with me, but on the off chance that there is someone who is brand new to this, they are unfortunately very unfamiliar with ErHa, I think a good thing would be to be able to provide them with trigger warnings. So yeah, that's also on the list from the next volume onward, and then I will hopefully go back and put it into the older read-alongs as well. Anyway, okay, do you have any plans for reading Remnants of Filth? I do. I already have the first 2 volumes, but that is unfortunately gonna have to wait a little bit, because the plan is basically that I first finish ErHa and then go to Remnants of Filth, and also we are doing Disabled Tyrant's Beloved Pet Fish in between, and I do want to finish up Moldu as soon as I'm done with reacting to the live action. So there's a lot on the list. Hi! I'm glad you can catch a live as well. I don't think I have seen you comment before, so welcome. But yeah, that's it. I don't know why I'm gesturing with my hand so much today, so just apologies in advance. And I think we can get started. Okay. For anyone who's following along with their own physical copies, we are on page 333, chapter 241. Truth. I don't know how much more truth we can handle. The scroll lit up on a dazzling morning. Bai Jue sat in the room within the temple, fiddling with a string of moon and star birdie beads as he murmured sutras. A shadow fell across the threshold, but Bai Jue didn't turn. He merely struck the wooden bell, its hollow dong ringing through the room, and sighed. "You're awake?" Moran spun around and saw Chuaning standing in the doorway, his slight figure blurring into the daylight. "Why did Shizun save me?" "No blood should be shed in Wubei Temple." "Sir, can you not give a more humane answer?" Ironically. Chuaning watched him in silence. "Seeing as you cut open your heart as proof, I recognize your sincerity. You may go down the mountain on your own. From this day on, you need not return." Chuaning didn't move to gather his belongings. He gazed at Huaijue's familiar silhouette amidst the incense and the chanting. "Shizun?" he said eventually. Shizun. Then what? So this is goodbye? Thank you for everything? That's all in his head. Blood had seeped through the gauze bandage on his chest. The knife was out, but his heart still throbbed with pain. After giving his teacher nigh 15 years of blind faith, all he had received in return was that pronouncement. I will have your spiritual core. I'm so excited for Disabled Times Volume 3 read along. Yes, honestly, I feel like I need the levity after this volume, and I'm so happy that I get to enjoy each of them kind of in unison. Okay. This, on its own, he could accept. But for nearly 15 years, he had believed Huaidrui was kind and compassionate, that he had empathy for all living creatures, each blade of grass, and every tiny ant. He had believed the entire world was as peaceful as Linan in the upper cultivation realm. But all of it was fake. Huaidrui had lied to him. The realization was 1,000 times more painful than the cracking of his spiritual core. Chuaning closed his eyes. Finally he said, "Farewell then, great master." He left every bit of his gentleness, trust, and innocence in the dignified monastery. Those were all things that Huaidrui had given him. Now, alongside the splinters of his spiritual core and the blood that had run from his body, they were taken from him. He turned and left. I knew he would hate me, Huaidrui said softly. Even if I had followed him down the mountain, he would always hold a grudge against me. So I let him go. From that point onward, I knew he would remember me as selfish and callous. He never acknowledged me again, and I no longer had the right to consider myself his Shizun. His 15th birthday had just passed. Fate had allowed us to walk together for 15 years, through summers and winters, through joys and sorrows. From that day on, nothing would be the same. It's very interesting considering I think old Moran, like Tashi and Jun, had that same approach of like, oh, I've already like cracked this thing, so I might as well shatter it, rather than, oh, I've cracked it, let me fix it with gold. You know, that kind of attitude that our current Moran has adopted. Hi! Huaidrui swept the steps in the courtyard. The leaves turned from bright green to dull yellow, until the twigs were devoid of vitality. Another winter had arrived. The monk stood beneath the eaves, a thick vestment wrapped around him, squinting out at the snow-covered grounds. His face was youthful yet, but his eyes were glazed with age. Like any elderly person, he tended to drift into thought if he sat long enough. Why am I making up words right now? What? Sorry, my bad. I was already 200 years old. Memories of my youth gradually grew less vivid, but for some reason, I remember the days I spent with Chuaning more clearly than ever. Sometimes I wondered if this was the sort of concern parents felt towards their children. But what kind of parent could I claim to be? I was no more than a cowardly butcher. I mean, you said it, Huaidrui continued. My yin energy waned by the day. I resigned myself to the thought that I would never atone for my sins in this lifetime. I had no desire to go anywhere, so I secluded myself in Wubei Temple year-round. Only when the high-tongue trees blossomed did I emerge. I'd always pick the most beautiful branch and ask someone to bring it to Shizun just as before. I'd never been a generous person, and there was only so much I could do. I didn't trust my judgment enough to try again. I imagined the rest of my life would pass like this, until the day someone showed up in my courtyard. I'm assuming it's the day that news of Chuaning's death came. It was deep in the night. A flurry of urgent knocks sounded at the door. Huajuei stood to open it, only to freeze in shock at the sight before him. Over his shoulder, Moran got a clear look at a new arrival's face. It was Chuaning. He had a deeply anxious look, and his complexion was wan even in the low light. Strangest of all, though it was a cold winter day, he only wore a thin summer robe. Moran's first thought was that he must have given his cloak to some other freezing refugee, but he quickly realized this couldn't be the case. Aside from the lightness of his robes, Chuaning was otherwise neatly dressed. Interesting. At Huajui's invitation, he entered the bedroom, flighty as a trapped animal. Without a word, he handed Huajue an enchanted incenser. 1,000 words stopped in Huajui's throat. In the end, all he asked was, What happened to you? I haven't much spiritual energy left. I'm afraid I won't be able to explain everything to the Great Master. Chuaning's words came out in a rush. The incenser is extremely important. I truly don't know whom to give it to. There is too many uncertainties in this world. I don't know what he'll become in the future, and I don't know who can keep the secret and stay out of danger. I have no choice but to prevail upon you to help me. Who? I mean, in the old timeline, I would think he's talking about... I just dropped my tea. Talking about Moran. But that's obviously not the case. Let's just read and find out. Let me not wonder, because my second guess was Shimei. What are you talking about? Are you unwell? Huajue was baffled, but Moran's head buzzed with sudden recognition, and the world momentarily flashed dark. He realized what was wrong with this Chuaning. He had a pierced ear. It's a fake Chuaning. What? This Chuaning wore a delicate red earring on his left ear, like a tiny spot of cinnabar. It was such a minute detail, but Moran felt he'd been struck by lightning. He found himself aghast. It wasn't Chuaning at all. Rather, this wasn't Chuaning from this world. He had to be from a past life, from Taishin Jin's timeline. It was the only possible explanation for the detail. Moran remembered with perfect clarity how he had condensed this earring. Oh, from his own blood, infused with his spiritual energy. It was enchanted to make Chuaning more sensitive whenever, thank you for that detail, Moran touched or violated him. I hate it. But what is Chuaning doing in this timeline? And is it more our Moran's past timeline, or is it the other Taishin Jin's past timeline, or are they one? Oh, so many questions. Moran was absolutely certain of it. In fact, he remembered his entire debauched line of thought. After making the earring, he had gotten Chuaning to his climax. Let's just go with that. He'd sucked on Chuaning's earlobe, waiting for him to shudder as he came, then pushed the stud into his ear as he was convulsing with pleasure. Oh joy, I do not have enough pillows for this. Chuaning had groaned, knitting his brows and clutching the bed sheets, but he couldn't throw off the man on top of him. Does it hurt? Moran had said, licking the drop of blood that trickled along the curve of his ear. Eyes flashing. Does it hurt, or does it feel good? The sharp, earring, piercing flesh had been yet another way he'd conquered that man. It was always painful for a foreign object to enter one's flesh, no matter what it was or where it went. Oy. There is not a bend deep enough for this Tashinjin. Moran had grown only more eager and impatient at Chuaning's pained whimpering. He'd stroked Chuaning's jaw, then pulled his face closer to share a sloppy, infatuated kiss. It's just an earring, he rasped. Why are you shaking? But it was an answer he already knew. Without a shred of pity, he'd forced an earring through Chuaning's earlobe and brushed his fingertips over the stud. See? It's pierced you through. It's buried inside you. Thanks for that. As Chuaning remained stubbornly silent, he said, It's snared in your flesh and blood. From now on, you belong to me. Chuaning from the past life had once come to this world. This knowledge struck terror into Moran's heart. His scalp tingled and his vision blurred. He could hardly catch his breath as he stared numbly at the scene before him. What was going on? He tried to gather his wits to attend to Chuaning and Huizhui's conversation, but his shock was too great. He grasped vague snatches of what Chuaning said to Huizhui, words like space-time gates of life and death, destroyed forbidden techniques, and unstoppable. He saw Huizhui crumple into a chair, his face ashen, pupils like pinpricks. How can you prove what you say is true? Chuaning hesitated. I can't prove it. I must ask the Great Master to trust me. This is just ridiculous. You're saying you came here from another world through a space-time gate of life and death, and in that world there's someone called Tashinjin. There's this Tashinjin who's already nearly destroyed the entire cultivation realm. You discovered his secret, so you did everything in your power to open the space-time gate and come to this world to change everything. Not to change everything, to prevent it from happening here. If this continues, we'll master the space-time gate sooner or later. Our world won't be the only one that ends. They'll. Who's the they? Something's not adding up. I don't think this is Moran's past Chuaning. My word, this is gonna get very confusing. But if it's not, then it makes sense. Like if, okay. It doesn't quite make sense, but I'm gonna say it anyway. If this Chuaning that Moran is seeing in the vision or illusion is his original Chuaning, or his original Chuaning did something similar and it actually had an effect. It wasn't like just a time loop type situation, which you sometimes get in time travel situations, then that might explain why there are too many people in the know in this timeline of Moran's that he's now living, because Chuaning telling Huizhui actually had knock-on effects. Oh, okay. We're gonna try and keep this straight, but it's a Danmei, so that's gonna be difficult. Okay. This is too absurd, Huizhui mumbled. This is impossible. It's completely nonsensical. The minutes dripped past. Chuaning glanced at the water clock by Huizhui's door, urgency gathering in his eyes. Even if the Great Master doesn't believe me now, he will soon understand. Before then, I ask only that you seal the censer in the cave on Dragon Blood Mountain. I've cast the most important spell on it. The Great Master can allow it to diffuse on its own. The only thing you have to do is... Huizhui looked up at Chuaning as if at a madman or an apparition. The only thing you have to do is prevent anyone from entering that cave. Chuaning continued. After you see the truth of what I'm telling you, find some way to bring myself from this world and the boy named Moran to Dragonblood Mountain together. The spell on the censer will take care of the rest. You needn't worry about anything else. Unless... No, but there's no way a different Ta Xinjun would do exactly... Like, if it wasn't... I was thinking, okay, maybe Ta Xinjun in the timeline that Chuaning is from isn't Moran, but I don't think anyone besides Moran would do the thing that he did to Chuaning that made our Moran identify him. Oh my goodness. Huizhui had opened his mouth in feeble protest when a shrill whistle sounded outside. To Moran's ears, it sounded just like the one that had called Ta Xinjun back into the rift. Chuaning instantly paled. He fixed Huizhui with a frantic gaze. Please, you're the only one in this world who can help me. There's no one else I can trust with this. Hearing Chuaning say trust, Huizhui froze, his eyes clouding over with age. Hesitantly, he took the incenser and gave Chuaning a tiny nod. The whistle blew again, sharper than before. Chuaning glanced outside the window, then said to Huizhui, Great Master, please guard the cave on Dragonblood Mountain, and if Ta Xinjun appears in this world, or, like I said, if a great heavenly rift opens to the ghost realm, turmoil will follow. If that happens, the Great Master should realize that what I've said is true. Okay, but how is the incenser gonna help us in any way? That keening whistle seemed to tear through Moran's eardrums. Chuaning gave Huizhui one last meaningful look, then turned and rushed outside into the night. At first, he thought those... why am I struggling? I'm so sorry, guys. At first, he thought to bow thrice with hands cupped overhead, as the disciple would to his master, but his fingers stalled halfway to his chest. Finally, he closed his eyes and merely clasped his hands respectfully before him. Who knew how Huizhui plucked up the courage to jump to his feet? Don't you remember what I did? He cried. Didn't I do the same thing to you in your world? You'll never believe me. But Chuaning only shook his head, his face indistinct in the darkness. Great Master. His figure grew fainter, more distant. I'm running out of time. Please, find a way. Use any means necessary. It's too important. Please find a way to convince me to bring the two of us to Dragonblood Mountain together. Well, he couldn't do it. Instead, he resorted to kidnapping Chuaning at the most number 99 second ever. At last, he vanished into the inky sky and glassy stars. Huizhui ran out into the courtyard. He saw a distant flash of blackness, even darker than the night. Chuaning was nowhere to be found. All that remained of his sudden visit was the incenser in Huizhui's hand. It brimmed with spiritual energy, solid in his grip, proving that this wasn't all a dream. The vision split and sheared before Moran's eyes. Images from previous scenes cascaded down like an avalanche. He said I should use any means necessary, but what could I possibly do? Huizhui exhaled. You could never trust me again. You wanted nothing to do with me. I couldn't be certain this wasn't all part of some plot. It wasn't until the heavenly rift opened in Butterfly Town and Wanning lost his life that I decided to write him a letter after bringing him back from the underworld. I deliberated at length about what to put in the letter. I didn't know how powerful the mastermind behind this was, so I didn't dare put the whole truth into writing. But there was no other way for me to meet with him. His abilities were formidable. After all, he had become the young elder of Shizun Peak. I had no chance of taking him away. I had no chance of taking him anywhere by force. Finally, I considered that his damaged spiritual core, which had never completely healed, must be giving him some trouble. With this as an excuse, I invited him to Dragonblood Mountain. Ah, damn it. Okay. Why would you think that this, instead of anything else, would prevail him to come to you? Like, he never does anything for himself. He will always go there if it's for someone else. But I had lied to him for 14 years. No matter how sincere my words, he was unwilling to believe me. Padre huffed out a deep, frustrated sigh. I waited all this time. When I imprisoned him on the mountain nearly 20 years ago, I went up every day hoping his attitude had changed. Decades later, I once again went to Dragonblood Mountain every day, wishing he'd return. If only he'd given me one more chance. The old monk's voice faltered like a kite cut from its string. I know my days are numbered. I can't wait much longer. In my last days, I made the scroll. After many painstaking revisions, I've included within it many memories I never wanted to share, but I am ultimately still a coward. I didn't want him to see the scroll while I lived. I couldn't bear the look of pain in his eyes. I saw enough of that look for a lifetime when he was 14. So Wanning, Hajre sighed softly, as though a weight had settled on his shoulders. By the time you see this, I will already have gone. I'm still very selfish. I didn't want to see you hate me, and so it's not until now, when my death is imminent, but I dare assure you the truth. You and the boy named Moran. I'm sorry. Back then, it was your Shifu who was wrong. You're alive, you're human, you always have been. Too little too late, sir. I mean, I totally agree with him, but Chuaning, I don't think is ever gonna genuinely believe that. And that just hurts to think about. Raijay fell silent for a long spell. Finally, he rasped, Shugungzi, can you forgive me? Sir, he just found out this information and you already want his forgiveness? Knew if who knew if the Chugungzi he entreated was Chuaning today or Chushun from 2 centuries prior? Raijay said no more. A wind rose, sending shards of memory scattering like luminous snow or long drifting seeds, gradually blanketing the ground. 200 years of sin and retribution, 14 years of joy and grief, all piled up like this. The child grinned. You're number one, I'm number one. Which flower blossoms on the pond? A lotus flower blossoms on the pond. The youth raised his voice. If you don't know how to save others, how can you save yourself? If I don't cultivate to immortality, so be it. Finally, those phoenix eyes fluttered shut. Farewell then, great master. All these snatches of the past, layered and blurred like a flashing carousel lantern. In the brightest moment, Moran once again saw Huayre bent over a low table, carving the last stroke into the wood of the sacred tree. The evening bell tolled. I'll call you Chuaning. I can't be crying over this, damn it. The memories battered Moran like waves. He rose and fell within the surf until a sharp shove sent him flying out of the memory scroll. He landed heavily on the gravel outside the cave on Dragonblood Mountain. It seemed time passed differently within the scroll. In the outside world, it was sunset, a vision of rosy serenity hovering between heaven and earth. As Moran lay there, he could almost believe he travelled back to the night so many years ago, when Huajue had let a drop of blood fall into the wood, and there came to be a child named Chuaning in this world. He sprawled on the ground, gaze unfocused. Shizun, Chuaning. Now he understood why Chuaning, always strong-willed, had sobbed so brokenly in his arms. Finally understood. But the cost of this knowledge was too high. It felt like a death by 1,000 cuts. Was it all his fault? Because of the evils committed by Emperor Taishinjin, Chuaning had spent 2 lifetimes trying to stop him from upending the world. It seems like it. Chuaning's spiritual core had nearly been carved out. The savior Guga from Wubei Temple who had saved his life. He wasn't human. He was the spirit of the sacred tree. Every blow landed like a brick. A single one of these truths would be enough to crush his bones, to say nothing of so many piling up one on top of another. For a moment, Moran could have sworn every bone of his had fractured. He couldn't move if he tried. His heart was in chaos. His searching gaze landed on Chuaning, sitting in silence with his eyes closed. All of a sudden, Moran's remorse coalesced into bone, his pity into flesh, his pain into blood. His desire to protect this man gave him the strength to struggle out of his fear and confusion, to rise up from the mire of those memories. Slowly he stood and walked over to Chuaning. Chuaning opened his eyes and looked at him. Neither spoke. Moran bent low and wrapped his arms around Chuaning. Shizun, it doesn't matter if you're human or a sacred tree, as long as you're still willing to help me. He tried to hold his tears back, but his voice broke on a sob. I'll always what? Stand by his side, but he wasn't worthy. Eventually he said, self-effacing and bitter, I'll always stand before you. I can't stay with you. I don't deserve you. I'm low and dirty. I blight on the world. But you're pure and clean. I can't stand next to you, wanting. So please, let me stand before you. I'll block all the blood and blades for you, all of it, until the day I die. Oh. This book has no chill. You say, will you still love me if I'm a sacred tree? But I feel like one of the two being a tree is the least concerning thing of all. Compared to Moran being an evil supervillain in his past life, I feel like being a tree is very chill. Oh no, oh no, the frickin' title. I don't know if I'm mentally prepared for this. Page 345, chapter 242, Consort Chu. Chuaning didn't ask any more questions about Tai Jun. In fact, he didn't say anything at all. The unease in Moran's eyes was better answer than he could ever get from asking. Besides, He was exhausted. After enduring blow after blow, his mind was numb. Only after a very long time did he pull out of Moran's embrace and slowly get to his feet. He didn't look directly at Moran. He closed his eyes before speaking with an eerie calm. I want to go into the cave. Moran couldn't say anything. Since my other self went through so much trouble to set this up, I want to take a look. When you learn the truth, will you hate me? An unbearably childish question, but Moran had to ask it. He answered himself in a mumble. You'll hate me. I mean, as much as it's gonna hurt, would you blame him? Chuaning's pupils flickered. His gaze finally came to rest on Moran. What exactly did Emperor Taishinjun do? You really don't want to know. And now is not the time. He didn't say you. Okay, sorry. Okay, no, that was fully my brain's fault. I take accountability. I thought this was Moran thinking, like, I did you. No. Luckily, Moran's mind is not in the gutter, unlike apparently mine. He didn't say you, he said Emperor Taishinjun. It gave Moran a thread of hope, one so slender he hardly dared to grasp it for fear it might snap. Chuaning's eyes narrowed slightly as his lips parted around another question. Was he a killer? I mean, serial killer at the very least. Silence. A mass murderer? Moran wordlessly closed his eyes. Chuaning recalled those dreams he used to have, those absurd neurotic dreams. Considering how that masked man had treated him by the Dragon Soul pool, he already had a faint inkling as to what their relationship must have been. But he couldn't get this question past his lips. At last he managed. What about me? Who was I to him? Moran's throat worked. He wanted to answer, but he couldn't. He'd been running from death for so long, and today his sins had finally caught up to him. He was like a condemned man waiting on the scaffold, watching the executioner's shadow raise the knife as he knelt. When would his head hit the ground? When? Suddenly, he was tired of waiting, tired of running. It was taking too long for this blade to fall. He'd rather rise to meet it, even if he'd end up a bloody pulp. Moran opened his eyes. Let's go into the cave. His fingers twitched, as though to take Chuaning's hand, but in the next moment he let his arm fall, fiddling with the hem of his sleeve as he walked on ahead. At the threshold of the cave he hesitated and turned around, flashing a grin at Chuaning. Shizun. Chuaning gazed back at him. That sudden smile was so brilliant, so warm, as though he were exhausting all his hope and joy. In a single instant, as though he would have no more use for them in the future. The amount of conflicting feelings that Meatbun manages to conjure in these moments is just too much, because it's, on the one hand, I fully get that he deserves every bit of pain that he is going through as like a, repentance type thing. And what he put other people through is like so much more. Still hurts. Moran's smile jolted Chuaning back to reality. He walked over, but he didn't know what to say. His heart was tied into a knot. He could only lift his ice-cold fingers and touch Moran's equally cold face. Eyes slowly widening, Moran stiffened. Chuaning closed his eyes and sighed. He reached down and took hold of Moran's hand, the hand Moran hadn't dared touch him with, as if reassuring Moran, but also himself. He said, "I've watched you grow into the person you are today. I know you're not him. You and Ta Xinjun are not the same." Moran's eyes were still curved into a smile. After a long pause, he chuckled, throat tight. But his eyes misted over. How could they not be the same? He was the evilest person in the world, a ghost who'd fled from his past life. For him to hear these words of confidence before the end was surely a sign of heaven's mercy, thought Moran. He wouldn't begrudge Chuaning whatever he chose to do after he saw the memories of his other self. Moran closed his eyes and took a deep breath. Hand in hand with Chuaning, he walked into the cave on Dragonblood Mountain. The instant they stepped inside, the scenery of the mountain vanished. The cave was narrow and cramped, no larger than a Certain Peak's disciple's bedroom. A small table occupied the center, upon which sat a tarnished censer, the one from Huadre's scroll. Tendrils of, how do you pronounce that? Diaphaneus? I think so, diaphaneus smoke? Let me know. Rose from the censer and filled the space. Moran disliked the smell of incense, but he found he didn't mind this one, which carried a faint whiff of Shifu Haitang. "What kind of spell is this?" asked Moran. Chuaning shook his head and hesitated. "I don't know," he said slowly. "My other self is a different person from me. I'm not necessarily familiar with all the spells he learned, just like how Ta Xinjun wouldn't necessarily know how to use a willow vine as a weapon. Diaphomus? Okay. We'll see how long it lasts, but for now I appreciate how clear Chuaning is trying to separate Moran and showing that, like illustrating that to Moran verbally. Again, I still won't begrudge whatever, I mean I say that now, but I still won't begrudge whatever reaction Chuaning has upon finding out that I think it's going to be a self-blame thing if I know Chuaning at all. But yeah, we'll see how long that lasts once he actually sees what's going on. His gaze drifted towards the steadily smoking censer. "Perhaps we have to touch it to let it know we're here." He tapped its side with a fingertip, but nothing happened. Ever since Moran entered the cave, he'd been watching Chuaning with a tender sorrow. He didn't want Chuaning to see the memories of his other self, but still he said, "Since Shizun set up an illusion for both of us, maybe it's not enough for you to touch it by yourself. Maybe we have to tell it we're both here together? Let's give it a try." From either side, they reached out to touch the delicate floral filigree on the censer's body. The scented smoke in the cave instantly grew denser, surging like a tide to fill the entire space and obscuring their hands from view. The swiftness of it caught Moran off guard. He grabbed for Chuaning's hand, but was swallowed by the mist. "Shizun!" he cried in alarm, but it was too late. The mist was infused with an extraordinary, pure, and potent spiritual energy, nothing like what he'd expected from an ordinary spiritual fall. For a moment, he felt he was floating in a cloud, and in the next, his limbs felt like they had been frozen. His body was completely unresponsive. Perhaps he could still use his voice. He tried to shout, "Shizun, are you okay?" But only an incomprehensible gurgle left his lips before he could move no more. Chuaning's predicament was similar. He called Moran's name into the mist. At first he could still hear his cries, but soon everything was silent. "Moran." He groped blindly, feeling for the edge of the illusion, but the spell in the center had somehow turned the small chamber into a cavernous expanse. He felt his throat close up. Like Moran, Chuaning realized with a start that he could no longer speak. He couldn't move a muscle. He lost control over his entire body. It felt just like those old dreams. It was him in the dream, but he couldn't choose his words or actions. He could only experience everything happening to him without being able to change a thing. His mind, already in turmoil, became even more confused. If there was something that needed to be said, why not just make a memory scroll? Why go to such trouble? That's a question. Only after a long while did the fog slowly dissipate. When he opened his eyes, the cave was gone. Scarlet candles swayed before him, waxen tears dripping down their sides. He sat before a familiar rosewood table, tidy and uncluttered. A deep scar ran down its surface. He had once soared into the table by accident while making a holy night guardian. The cave had turned into the Red Lotus Pavilion. Chuaning sat stiffly, his body still unheeding of his command. This illusion was much like the one from Peach Blossom Springs, except that he was powerless to act on his own. He could only passively experience the events of the past. What was the purpose of the spell? What did his other self want him to see, to live through? The sky was darkening outside the window. Two servants he'd never seen before stepped up and began combing his hair. Under control of the illusion, he reached up to stop them. "There's no need. I'll do it myself." A loud bang sounded as someone threw open the door. Chuaning could sense that he dreaded seeing this person. He sat up at the table, back ramrod straight, refusing to turn his head, even letting his eyes fall shut. I'm actually really scared because we have gotten like the bare minimum of information about this, and the little bit that we have gotten has still been horrible. So I'm scared about learning anymore. "Both of you, out," a familiar voice said from behind him. The two servants sat down their combs and basins, then lowered their heads deferentially. "Yes, Your Majesty." Chuaning heard them shuffle out. He still didn't turn or open his eyes, but of course he knew who had entered the room. He would know that voice anywhere. With an animalistic sixth sense, Chuaning felt that man walk towards him, one step after another. Look, the more I read of this book, the more I can't help but wonder, like, what the hell would a censored version of this look like? How are you explaining the fact that Ta Shin-jun has a male consort? I just, I can't help but wonder. I'm sure there is some way to make it straight if you squint. I don't know. I say that, but I don't actually know how you would do that. Chuaning felt the man walk towards him, one step after another. His breath was suddenly puffing against Chuaning's temple, hot and reeking of wine. Why haven't you gone to bed yet? Moran asked. Chuaning heard his own tepid reply. I'm getting ready. I can tell. Moran laughed softly into his ear. You've taken off your outer robe and removed your hair crown. You really hated that outfit, didn't you? This venerable one commissioned the robes with the purest gold thread, and the crown inlaid with the most precious jade. This venerable one gives you only the very best things, better even than what the Empress receives. Yet you still disdain them. Sure. Like, this is Wei Wuxian telling himself he's straight all over again. Just in a less evil way. Oh, more evil way, actually. Chuaning pressed his lips together. Fine. Moran didn't wait for Chuaning to reply. You don't like anything I give you. You've always looked down on me in your heart of hearts, he snorted. So what? Look, in the end you had no choice but to be mine. Moran snaked an immodest hand around Chuaning's waist, pulling him into his chest. The sensation, coupled with his anger, was beyond what Chuaning could endure. His eyes finally flew open, allowing him to take in the scene at last. He faced a bronze mirror, which reflected the image of himself and Moran. Moran wore an emperor's beaded crown, and was attired in elaborate robes of red and gold, wedding robes. Oh, damn. Okay, so right to the wedding. That's something. As he held Chuaning from behind, he pressed close to mouth at his earlobe and neck. Chuaning shuddered in fury, but not just that. Stop screwing around. Alright then tell me, Shizun, how would you like to be screwed? Thanks. His admonishments had backfired, earning him only ridicule. Chuaning seethed through clenched teeth. You brute. Moran chuckled. His gaze was besotted, his handsome features suffused with an intoxicating allure. Sorry, intoxicated, not intoxicating. Very different in this connotation. Lips ghosting over the side of Chuaning's face, he murmured, So, what if I'm a brute? Look at yourself. I've still claimed you. Through and through. Chuaning didn't know why, but a violent impulse coursed through him. He felt his fingers grasping for something before him on the table, which he thrust into the back of Moran's hand. Did he just stab him with a fork? Like, are we not Nikkei's 2.0 here? If you get the reference, yeah. Moran let out a muffled grunt of pain. Chuaning took the opportunity to throw him off. He glared at the tall figure wreathed in lamplight. Get the hell out. From the vantage point, Chuaning could finally see what he'd used to stab Moran. It was a golden hairpin, the kind a man might wear at his wedding. Moran lifted a hand to examine his bleeding wound. He laughed coldly. Then his tongue flicked out like a viper's, licking away drops of scarlet blood. His frenzied eyes gleamed with a bestial light. They somehow marred the gallantry of his features, giving him the look of a vengeful ghost. Their spiritual cores already shattered. This venerable one let his guard down. Lips dyed carmine. Moran began to laugh. Chuaning, your claws certainly are sharp. This venerable one has underestimated you. I have some kind of bug on the page and I don't want to accidentally squish it. There we go. Yeah, that's why I want to see the live action so I can work out how they managed to bromance. Oh goodness. The thought that Moran and Chuaning are stuck in the body is unable to speak or change the events is so diabolical. I think that is the worst part of it, honestly. Like, it's worse to kind of be experiencing it firsthand than be an outside witness, though I think even that would have its like own messed up connotations. Okay, let's just see, where are we at? Okay, I think we can do one more page because then we're officially halfway through the amount that we need to read. Oh, and of course we have art of this because they cannot give us happy art. They have to give us tragic art. It's a lot. It's a lot. It's a lot. Look at that. It's beautiful, but it's. I hate the way that this Moran, like Tachi and Jun looks. He looks so slimy. Get out. Get out. Get out. Is that all you can say? Moran let his hand fall, but he didn't move to bandage it. He almost seemed to enjoy the pain, a perverse satisfaction coming over his face. You love to. One word. You love to castigate this venerable one, so why were you so silent today in front of all our guests? Faced with Chuaning's stony silence, Moran continued. This venerable one immobilized your body, not your voice. You could have screamed at this venerable one. Oh, I'm just realizing. I'm so sorry. The fact that I'm so slow. The likelihood that Moran is having to sit and sit and watch figuratively from his own eyes as he does this to Chuaning. Like, he's not somewhere else doing his own version of a vision, which is what I was assuming originally. But no, I think he is experiencing this from the other side. Oh, no, 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 no. This venerable one immobilized your body, not your voice. You could have screamed at this venerable one not to touch you then. Moran stepped closer, stopping an arm's length away. He grabbed the wrist of the hand in which Chuaning still held the hairpin, his grip startlingly strong. His mouth split into a grin, teeth stained scarlet. But all you did was spill the water for washing our hands all over the venerable one's robes as soon as I released your hands from the spell. Moran paused and laughed. Shizun, you were ever so furious. Why didn't you yell? You have you no sense of shame? This venerable one is shameless indeed. But then again, who can truly claim to be a gentleman? Shumeng? I invited him to the feast today, but he declined. What would you have done if he'd come? Moran chuckled. Would you have started shouting when we knelt to heaven and earth? Would you have begged him to take you away? Chuaning's conscious mind was still deeply befuddled by the conversation and the illusion, but he could tell this body understood what Moran was saying. He ground his teeth in anger, refusing to speak. Moran watched him seethe for a moment, then leaned closer and licked his earlobe with his blood-streaked tongue. Thanks for that. Chuaning flinched. Oh wait, is this where the earring situation comes in? Chuaning, the way you glare at me is with such resentment in your eyes, it's like you're begging to be held down and slept with. Moran yanked Chuaning's hand below his waist. If you don't believe me, just feel right here. Isn't it too big and hot? Shizun, you're an elder. Shizun. Each address was more respectful than the last, but somehow they sounded increasingly condescending. See, it wants you so badly. Get the hell out. That's the third time you've said that now. Moran's eyes brimmed with malevolence. Lucky for you, today is a joyous occasion for this venerable one, to have ascended to the top of the world and married a beautiful wife and concubine. This venerable one even gave the empress the cold shoulder and came to keep you company. But yeah, no, he doesn't have any like specific special feelings towards Chuaning. No. Why are you still so vicious? He paused before biting out two more words laced with venom. Console Chu. Chuaning, trapped in this body, started like he'd been struck by lightning. Physically, he felt his stomach churn with nausea, his limbs shaking despite his attempts to control them. Rand burst into laughter, eyes glittering. What's wrong? Are you perhaps overjoyed by the words to hear this venerable one address you thus? Considering how I spend every single night with you, I would have long knocked you up and made you bear a bastard for this venerable one if you were a woman. Thank goodness we don't have to deal with that as well. How could you be expected to continue serving me in bed if this venerable one didn't give you a title? This venerable one is not an unreasonable man. Do we need to get him a dictionary? He snickered. Chuaning's head throbbed with rage, but he couldn't say anything. The world flashed dark. Did this rage and disgust belong only to the memories he was inhabiting? But both his physical body and his conscious soul were overcome with revulsion. He felt he might vomit, but some part of him was still too terrified to believe what he was seeing. Emperor Tashin Jin, the past lives Moran, just what had he done? It was insane. Insane. Moran had his full of laughter. No, don't call him Moran. I know that he has been calling him Moran, but please just stick with Tashin Jin. Moran had his full of laughter. He gripped Chuaning's jaw and crushed his lips into a harsh kiss, what the hell is a kiss, flooding his mouth with the taste of copper. Moran's other hand closed pitilessly around both of Chuaning's wrists. He dragged Chuaning to the bed, shoving him down, and leaned over. Trembling, Chuaning closed his eyes. He found himself pinned beneath that hot, solid, masculine body, as immovable as a great boulder. Time for you to do your duty, said Moran. We're married now. You belong to me. You can't escape it. I have some feelings. Okay, so quick. Just I am feeling. Obviously, this is horrible. But I think what's weirdly bothers me more than it should, is the idea that as I can't remember this is such a weird question. Has our Moran and Chuaning actually had sex? They did, right? I hope they have, because what I was fearing is number one, that we're gonna see the scene. Number two, that if this were Chuaning's first experience with Moran in this life as well as the previous one, like, can we have no nice things? None? And I feel bad that I can't remember if they've actually slept together or if they've just like done everything else. Cause I kind of like disassociate slightly when I read those scenes. Um, so yeah, I don't know, but I'm kind of hoping that we don't see that scene, and also why like that it's kind of cruel, and I don't know how specifically Chuaning, like the past Chuaning, could pick what they would be experiencing, but why have your other self live through this? Is there no other way that you could maybe not have him being violated be one of the memories that he has to live through? I don't know. Yes, remember the whole scene with Shumong. Okay, so okay. See, I couldn't remember if it was just, all the other things except the main thing. Or if it was also the main thing. But okay, so it was also the main thing, so at least this wouldn't be the first time. But it doesn't make it less traumatizing. Okay, so I am gonna stop here for now. We're gonna take a 10-minute break, so about 17-ish minutes past, and then we'll be back to finish this, and I might just need to remember to bring tissues with in case. We'll see. territory we are maybe treading into. It's Chuaning's first time around. Want to go easy on him in this lifetime and take it slow and be careful. It's very tragic and traumatic for both of them, but that's meat bone for you. I'm not happy about it. I am about it. Like, what is it with Danmei authors and not having consensual first time? I answered it. Anyone who wants to follow along, though I don't know why you would. Chapter 243. Third. Interesting. The crimson sheets rippled beneath him. I think we might be back. I hope. No. Has it settled down now? Okay. Where did I lose you guys? That is now the question, because I deeply don't want to be rereading what I read, but we might have to, because I did not get very... So, it seems like it's paused again. Crimson Sheets, great. Okay. Literally this top of the page, yay, we get to reread everything. Okay. And now we're so far into the hour already. Okay, let's try this again. The crimson sheets rippled beneath him, and a pungent musk assailed his nose. Chuanling looked up at Moran's face, the illusion overlapping with those old dreams. But they weren't dreams at all. They had all been real. Long ago, he and Moran had already lain skin to skin. They had already been wed. Moran had imprisoned him. He had knelt on the snow-covered ground, begging to see Moran. Just a quick note, like, it feels awkward re-commenting on things, but I mentioned originally, it just kind of sucks that Chuaning now also has these dream memories that he can just add onto the pile of trauma that he's now going to be experiencing. All of it was real. At that moment, Chuaning couldn't name what he felt, or perhaps within the swirling incense, his mind gradually merged with that of the past life's Chuaning. His feelings, his thoughts, all of it aligned. He felt his robes ripped open. As his lips were captured again, Chuaning closed his eyes. He felt only pain. Who was he? Was he the lion-hearted Baidu immortal, or the laughably cowed consort Chu? Was he the Chuaning who'd earned Mo Zhongshi's sincerity, or the Shizun Taixin Jun despised? Nothing was clear. Scraps of memories floated through his mind like vivid petals upon a running stream. He tried to dredge them up, but couldn't make them out. Eventually, only the events playing out upon the bed were clear enough to perceive. Great. Again, I don't know, I'm guessing people already know, but like, trigger warning potentially. In the illusion, Moran gripped his waist and tore away his underclothes. There was none of the doting foreplay he was familiar with, only brisk subjugation. Although the surroundings weren't real, he and Moran, under control of the spell just as he was, acted out all the emotions from the past life. Moran pinned him to the sheets without a single kiss or caress. Chuaning's only warning was the rustle of robes beneath him before a blunt, scorching hit pressed against his entrance. Shizun, pay attention. Can you feel how it wants you? This venerable one is about to bestow his imperial favor upon you. I think he would decline if asked. You bastard. Moran scoffed. Don't you still have to spread your legs for this bastard? Chuaning felt a tearing sensation. With one thrust, that throbbing length breached Chuaning where he had never been penetrated before. I mean, if I'm following this correctly, technically he had been, like this body had been, but not Chuaning mentally. It hurt. It hurt so much. He hastily remembered Moran's gentle eyes in the darkness, Moran kissing him in the depths of the hot springs, saying to him, "It'll hurt. Listen to me. Let's wait until next time." I wish you hadn't, which I hate saying, but Taixin Jun showed him no such mercy. When that terrifying length began to move inside him, Chuaning felt it might puncture his guts, as if the next savage thrust would be the one to pierce through his abdomen and impale him then and there. Chuaning flailed like a fish dragged to shore, but all the comfort he received was a crisp slap across his face. I do not have enough pillows. This is very infuriating. Okay. It's not like I haven't slept with you before, Taixin Jun snapped. How many times has it been? Now you're acting all pure and virtuous. His cheek bloomed scarlet. Chuaning turned his face aside, hair spilling over reddened eyes, refusing to let slip a single sound or tear. He had never been more humiliated than on this night, but he could match that humiliation with haughtiness. Moran leaned forward and looped an arm around his waist, his hips bucking repeatedly against Chuaning's. The place where they joined grew unspeakably hot and sticky. Moran paused in his movements. He wanted to see Chuaning's disgrace. He drew in a harsh breath and wrenched Chuaning's jaw to the side, his eyes dark and distant as he looked down at his face. You. He had meant to speak more humiliating words, but those restrained, long-suffering eyes were unexpectedly beautiful beneath the candlelight. Moran stared for a moment, then leaned down and claimed his lips in another bruising kiss. His warm, wet tongue licked roughly into Chuaning's mouth. As the kiss grew more heated, his thrusts quickened into sharp snaps, sinking as deep as possible each time. His thick length pulsing inside Chuaning. Sticky fluid seeped from where their bodies met, dripping down Chuaning's thighs with every thrust. Moran broke the kiss, but his attitude became only more infatuated. His eyes misted over. Whether with primal desire or deep feeling, it was hard to say. Don't clutch the sheets. You belong to me now. You can hold on to me. I think not. In this entire debauched tableau, this was the only sentiment that resembled affection, but Chuaning didn't heed him, refusing to embrace him or willingly sink into pleasure with him. Moran's face gradually grew sinister again, his thrusts becoming increasingly wild. Chuaning twisted his hands into the bedding, tendons straining in his wrists. He couldn't stand up to such forceful treatment, but Moran didn't relent, freely pinching his waist and buttocks. He had no idea how long this went on for before Moran roughly pulled out with a look of deep displeasure. I have so much resentment in me right now over the fact that not even this timeline's Chuaning could be spared from this experience. Chuaning heard himself groan as Moran flipped him over. I don't want to read this. His slick, spasming entrance was open slightly, fluids from their draining still inside him. The massive head of Moran's length pressed against the cleft of his ass, rolling back and forth. I'm gonna be speeding through this because I am deeply uncomfortable. He heard Moran ask, "Isn't it big?" No answer. "Your husband knows how to make you feel good, hmm?" No. Like, I so wish. And also I don't, but like, I so wish Moran could feel how deeply unpleasant this is for Chuaning, because I think that would just annoy him more. But then the backlash of that annoying him more would not be worth it. Chuaning heard himself rasp, as if on the verge of falling apart. I'm not gonna say it, but he cursed him out. Moran saw. He rummaged around beside the bed and grabbed something. Chuaning's legs were forced apart. Then an indiscriminate amount of some cold ointment was squeezed into him. He heard himself choke on himself. Moran, Moran, you beast. Moran, Moran. No, that wasn't right. Moran was the one who smiled brilliantly at him beneath the tree in full bloom. Moran said, "Shizun, Shizun, I want to hold an umbrella over you for as long as I live." Moran touched his hair and said gently, "It'll hurt." Moran was the one who grinned at him across waves of golden grain, who opened his arms wide for him, who fed him toasted milk candy, who lowered his lashes and smiled because of something he said, his cheeks going pink. He was bashful and innocent. This was all wrong. Fear flooded Chuaning. Perhaps the incenser had been left in the cave too long. The scenes that followed were muddier than the earlier ones. Darkness closed in. Chuaning's mind was blank. He couldn't see, he couldn't speak. All he knew was that he was still restrained, and Moran was still buried inside him, his searing growth making his scalp grow numb. Eventually, his surroundings brightened once more. When Chuaning came back to his senses, the first thing he heard was Moran's distorted cursing. The stinging pain of a slap burned across his face. I don't know why, but like the physical violence on top of the sexual assault just enrages me to a different peak. Like, it's not enough that you took like away someone's will in that way. Now you have to like also display anger in a different way. Like, I don't know why it just gets to me so much. Something cold and hard moved inside of him, soothing the terrible, maddening ache within. It was still their wedding night. Chuaning could clearly recall what had happened just before this. He couldn't stop recounting the events of the past life. He knew Moran had used an aphrodisiac salve on him. The drunken Tashinjin had been increasingly erasable? I don't think I'm pronouncing that correctly. Maybe they meant to say irritable? But anyway, and violent throughout the course of the night. Alcohol and lust had burned the corners of Moran's eyes, turning them scarlet. This youthful emperor was ruled by hatred and desire. He grasped Chuaning by the throat and shouted, "Chuaning, is this what you want? You won't relent? Huh. How stubborn can you be? You'd rather..." "We slept with to death." What? That doesn't make sense. You'd rather F yourself to death than let me? I'm so confused, but okay. Chuaning heard himself reply, "I don't need you." Oh, okay, I think I see what's... He sounded utterly shattered. If he hadn't felt his lips move, he wouldn't have believed it was his own voice. Hot tears flowed down his cheeks. "Moran, spare me." The man above him roared madly. "Who's going to spare me? Huh, Chuaning? Have you ever thought who's going to spare me? Who can spare me?" He pinned him to the bed and pulled out the object that had been inside him, tossing it aside. It clattered on the ground, ringing metallic. A sword, or perhaps a candlestick. Had he just been masturbating with something like that? Moran touched his face, his voice crazed. Perhaps it was Chuaning's imagination, but it also seemed to carry a note of sorrow. I mean, that doesn't matter. Hi, I'm sorry you had to come in at a moment like this. Good luck. Erasable is a word. It means... Okay, cool. Did I pronounce it correctly? I'm not sure. Chuaning, I hate you so much. You killed the person I love the most. What am I supposed to do? Tell me. What am I supposed to do? I can only make you pay. I can only bring you to ruin at my hands. Chuaning. The man grasped his own heavy length. In his frenzy, his first thrust went askew. The slick hot head slipped past Chuaning's hole. Moran gasped for breath and lined himself up once more. Fingers digging into Chuaning's waist, he pressed in. Chuaning heard himself moan hoarsely, stretched to his limits. The man panted roughly as his legs slid him open, scraping against those aphrodisiac-smeared walls. Chuaning shook from head to toe, drenched in sweat, his eyes losing focus. At last, lust swallowed him up. The scene dimmed again. When he could see once more, his only sensation was boundless ecstasy. He could no longer differentiate between the body in the illusion and his real body. He was in desperate congress with that wild-old man. Moran was merciless, pinning him down on the bed. Chuaning sobbed beneath him, his fingers buried in the pulse they were lying on. Each brutal thrust threatened to crush him. He could feel Moran's sweat dripping into the small of his back, collecting in the dimples at the base of his spine. Say it. Do you want me? You're squeezing me like a little... I'm not saying that word! What's the point of denying it? I'm going to make you come just like this. By now, Chuaning was teetering on the brink of insanity. That all-consuming desire had wrecked his soul. Only his body remained, at the mercy of Moran's ministrations. Every inch of him needy and sensitive, impossible to satisfy. We still have so many pages left and I'm not ready for it. And I forgot to put sugar in my tea, crap. Okay. Does it feel good? Do you like it like this? Moran braced him on the bed with one arm, braced himself on the bed with one arm, his other coming up to stroke Chuaning's chest and abdomen. The bed creaked and swayed. Moran's eyes glinted with a feverish light, erotic and intoxicated. Say it. Tell me you need me. He punctuated his demand with a snap of his hips. Chuaning trembled under the wave of pleasure. It eroded his control, stroked his terror. Finally, his mind crumbled. Hoarse, gasping sobs leaked from his throat. That's right. Let it out. Moran closed his eyes and let his head fall back, the jut of his throat rolling. He slapped Chuaning's ass. Let me hear you, and I'll make you feel even better. What do you need? The drawn-out torture had sapped Chuaning's awareness of all but this moment. Shuddering, he whined desperately. Say it. We're not saying it. But he asks, shall we say. He says the thing that Moran wants him to say. Moran's eyes darkened and his hips drove forward with a sloppy eagerness. What I hate about this is, obviously, outsider can totally differentiate that this is very much non-consensual. None of this is okay. I am worried that Chuaning is gonna do the thing that sometimes happens where people think that just because their body responded to something like this, that must mean they somehow wanted or deserved it in some way, shape or form, which is obviously false. But I don't know if Chuaning would be able to know that. Like, that it's okay that he's responding that way and it doesn't mean any of this is is his fault or something that he actually wanted or anything like that. Some of his thrusts were so wild, the head of his leg slipped out when he pulled back. Each time he hurriedly lined himself up and pressed in again in a heated, wet slide. He rasped to Chuaning, pinned solidly beneath him. Shizun, you're so hot inside, so wet and hot. You're taking me so well. This disciple could get addicted to this. Sir, aren't you ready? Like, you literally turned down the woman you married on the night of your marriage for this man. Don't stop. Harder. Harder. Chuaning drew in a sharp breath. A little faster. Deeper. Moran grasped Chuaning's trembling hand where it was wringing the bed sheets, wrapping an arm around him from behind. Voice suddenly surpassing tender, he murmured into his ear, Chuaning, today's our wedding day. I'll make you come on me, then I'll come inside you. I'm going to fill your belly with my seed. Shizun, you're so tight. Kill me. Why are you only like this when I use medicine on you? I wonder. Does someone want to give him a clue? You're making me drink tea without sugar and I'm angry about it. Not you, not you guys, him. He asked, licking Chuaning's earlobe. You like it when I treat you like this, don't you? The man's length was so thick, so long, that Chuaning felt like it might run him through at its deepest. Unable to speak, he could only shake his head, tears gathering at the corners of his eyes. Do you like it? Chuaning couldn't muster a reply. You don't like it. Moran's thrusts came to an aborted halt, his length still fully seated inside him. Chuaning could feel it twitching inside him, throbbing in time with their rapid heartbeats. The subtleties of the sensation compounded Chuaning's torment. His throat was parched, but his soles were thoroughly chilled. The man rolled his hips a few times, slow movements like the roots of a great tree breaking soil, like a tender seedling pushing aside the dirt. Racked with spasms, Chuaning sagged on the bed. Never mind then, Moran rumbled in his ear. If you don't like it. Chuaning's eyes flew open. His heart ached, but he already abandoned himself to desperation. No, don't. His eyes darted wildly, his lids drifting closed. I can't take it anymore. That dose of aphrodisiac was hundreds of times more potent than an ordinary person could bear. Moran's voice was low and husky. His words were difficult to make out. Then what do you want me to do? Oh, yeah, okay. Inside. I can't take it anymore. Save me. The man behind him heaved a sigh of satisfaction. He lifted Chuaning up and settled him in his lap, facing him, then backed upward, diving into him aggressively from below. Never before had Moran gone in so deeply, each thrust pressing so far in that his balls strained at his entrance, threatening to push into. Ooh! Okay, that's unpleasant. Flesh melded seamlessly into flesh. Chuaning gasped and moaned, loose-limbed in Moran's arms. Moran's hips moved tirelessly as he pulled Chuaning's face down to kiss him hard, breaths blowing between them. His throat bobbed as he swallowed. So good. Chuaning muttered mindlessly, as though his souls had left his body to drown in an ocean of desire. Don't stop. So hot. Fast. I won't stop. I'll give you everything. Chuaning. Running. Moran kept up this pace so long, Chuaning wondered if he might die in his arms like this. Fluids and salve dripped out of him, churning to foam with their incessant motion. Oh, damn! Smearing onto his thighs and staining the sheets. Suddenly, Moran hugged him tight, shifting forward to press Chuaning down on the bed again. Lifting his legs, he drove into him with renewed urgency, with alarming speed and force. Chuaning's eyes widened, soft whimpers trailing from his lips. The man thrust into him with single-minded focus, pulling out each time until only the head of his cock remained inside. Then, snapping his hips forward so fiercely, Chuaning's cries hitched with his movements. Wanting. It wasn't anyone else he wanted. And yet it takes him 3 volumes to actually figure it out in the story we read. He cupped Chuaning's face, pressing their foreheads together. Babe. That feels so out of place, but anyway. I'm gonna come. Let me come inside you. Chuaning's lips parted, gasping for air like a fish on the verge of death. He didn't even know why he was calling out. All he could do was moan in the grip of that overwhelming ecstasy, the heavy musk of sex filling his nose. Come for me, he whined, voice breaking. Okay, just give me a second. The talk still have, indeed. You're making me drink. Oh goodness, I feel like I'm gonna need an entire warehouse full of pillows at this point. It's excruciating. Like, it's so many pages. I think it's literally gonna be an entire chapter. I can't help but wonder still about the title, obviously no spoilers. But third what? Third Ta Xinjun? Third time? I don't know. Sprawled into him. Moran closed his eyes and growled, his hips stuttering, the sheets in total disarray. Chuaning's head struck the bedpost, but Moran kept thrusting, insatiable, making sure Chuaning took every last drop. The sensation sent great shudders through Chuaning. His pale, slender toes curled. Finally, he couldn't stop himself from wrapping his arms around Moran's neck. I. The ragged breaths mingled in the air between them. Moran moaned as he came, Chuaning crying out hoarsely beneath him. Whether they found themselves immersed in their tumultuous ocean of lust because of the potency of the aphrodisiac or because of the desires hidden in both of their hearts, unbeknownst to either, who could say? Yeah, who could say? After what seemed like an age, I mean, I felt every single second of that age, honestly. Chuaning's awareness slowly returned to him. Somehow, along with his conscious mind, came the memories of his other life, rushing in like a tide. After his and Moran's frenzied union, these recollections poured in one after another. Remembered a heartbroken Moran kneeling in the snow after Shimei's death at the Heavenly Rift. Remembered Rufung sect awash in blood, earth and sky stained scarlet. Moran was laughing in delight as he ran his sword through Yelongshi's shoulder. He remembered how he'd been made into a blood hourglass and how Moran had salvaged his life in the Red Lotus Pavilion to then imprison him deep in the palace. His freedom rested away. Oh, so all of these things we skip lightly past, but the frickin' rape scene we had to read. Thanks for that. All of it came to him one scene after another. The cave had once again appeared around them. He could feel the ice-cold ground beneath him, his robes torn away, his whole body damp and hot. Moran held him tightly from behind, his arms trembling. Both were drenched in sweat, and the air was heavy with the scent of... Wait, so they'd physically acted it out? What kind of messed up spell is that, past Chuaning? Like, I am fully judging you. He remembered everything. Chuaning didn't move. He didn't say anything. He didn't lose his temper. His head ached fit to split. He could feel that during their joining, something intangible had transferred from Moran's body into his own. Whatever it was, it allowed him to take hold of these memories of his other life. I have feelings, and I cannot articulate them right now, so we're just going to sit in silence for a few seconds. Chuaning didn't move. He didn't say anything. He didn't lose his temper. Oh wait, I read that already. Sorry, I'm so like. But what was it? There were too many new memories. Chuaning's skull felt swollen and tender. He should have known what it was that they exchanged between them, he thought. But as it was, he simply couldn't figure it out. Shizun. Rand's voice was so hesitant in his ear, like a soft bud at the end of a branch in the first days of spring. That harsh, domineering manner was completely gone. Sorry. Chuaning didn't turn in Moran's embrace, but at the sound of Moran's voice, he could imagine his red, teary eyes, his miserable, rueful expression. I'm sorry. I still ended up hurting you. The censor had affected Moran the same way it had affected Chuaning. Although he remained conscious, he couldn't control any of his physical actions. When he grabbed Chuaning by the waist, when he took the man beneath him with such unforgiving urgency, Moran only felt terrible pain. He didn't want this at all. When he looked down and saw Chuaning's eyes red with unshed tears, he wanted to bend low and kiss him gently, to soothe and comfort him, but his lips shaped cutting words, and his hands carried out such fierce abuse. No matter how his heart had screamed in agony, there had been nothing he could do to stop himself. Chuaning lay on the frigid stone, head throbbing, so sapped of strength he couldn't lift so much as a finger. As he listened to Moran's apology, his ears buzzed and his vision flashed dark, as though he might pass out again at any moment. I skipped ahead and now I don't want to read it. His desperate screams had left his voice scratchy and hoarse. Pull out first. Moran pressed his lips together and didn't answer. He'd come out of the illusion earlier than Chuaning and had made space between them as soon as he regained control of his body, but Chuaning's terror was so severe he thought Moran was still buried inside him. Oh! Like they came completely unprepared. There was no, like, even the illusion was more prepared than they were. The ache in Moran's heart was unbearable. Before they'd entered the cave, he thought they might encounter something akin to the memory scroll. Never had he expected he would also return to his past life's wedding night on Shizun Peak. Never had he expected to find himself dressed in scarlet and golden finery, pushing open the door to the Red Lotus Pavilion once again. Moran knew all too well what he'd done, but he'd never imagined the spell would make him relive the part of his past. He had no desire to hurt Chuaning ever again, to be Emperor Taishin Jun ever again, but his body wouldn't answer to him. Even worse, throughout the entire brutal course of events, he could feel anticipation an excitement singing in the depths of his heart. In that one respect, he and Tashinjin were no different. They both yearned to tear Chuaning to shreds, to make his submission total. Why try to fight it? He was still the same, nor were you. Oh no, like I was prepared for Chuaning to be like shattered and all kinds of devastation on Chuaning's side. Moran spiraling, I for some stupid reason, was not prepared for. He couldn't change. He couldn't escape. In the course of that violent subjugation, Moran's brain had buzzed with dizzy pleasure when he heard the man underneath him whimpering in pain. Satisfaction clashed with all-consuming guilt, sending spray flying high into the air. Suddenly you couldn't tell who he was. Was he Tashinjin or Mozongshu? Was he good or evil? Kind of wicked. There, between the sheets, he'd touched Chuaning's face and spoken those same disgraceful words he'd said in the past life. Counsel Chu. Yes, in the past lifetime, of all the acts he'd committed against Chuaning, 3 were more unspeakable. The first was using a killing move against him. The second, of course this is going to be where the title comes in and just destroys us because we're not already dead. The second was humiliating him by forcing him to submit in bed, and the third was to marry him. You know, like, out of the 3 things, marriage kind of does not seem like the biggest deal right now. All the other things seem much more important. Moran had stripped him of his identity. Okay, I mean, if you explain it like that, I guess. Had stripped him of his identity and stolen his autonomy. Acting on his own selfish desires, he transformed the dauntless cultivator into his rightful concubine. Not many had known the true identity of the consort Shu the emperor had taken. Thanks. Let me just retract my statement real quick. Sorry. Too many pillows and not enough at the same time. Strangest problems. But it was an undeniable truth that Moran had forced him to don the scarlet veil and bow with him to the heaven and earth before the watchful eyes of the crowd. He'd foisted this unwanted title upon Chuaning. The horrible irony, I'm just realizing that even if they hadn't had the ghost marriage in the previous, like, in this timeline, the 7th Ghost King would probably have still recognized them as being married because of this nonsense. He had foisted this unwanted title upon Chuaning. Even Moran wasn't sure what he'd intended with this. If he'd really wanted to cause Chuaning pain, he would have announced to the world that the Emperor had married his own Shizun. He could have let everyone know that the Baidu immortal had been reduced to Tashinjun's bedwarmer. Yeah, that is interesting. Why hadn't he done so? He'd instead guarded the secret so carefully that even his Empress Song Chitong had been ignorant of the true identity of the mysterious consort Shu for a long time. He had fantasized about exacting revenge, about publicizing Chuaning's disgrace, but in the end he'd put on a show with no spectators at all, and yet it took him 3 books to realize he was in love with Chuaning. But he's not a damn husky at all. Yet he'd savored every moment of it. Why? He recalled how he'd wanted to give Chuaning a grave after he died, but was afraid everyone would finally see through his ploy and laugh at him. He had no choice but to wield the pick himself, digging a trench before the heaven-piercing tower. Within it, he buried the red and gold robes Chuaning had worn at their wedding ceremony. Tashinjin had sat in front of that gravestone for a long time, cheek in hand. He'd wanted to write, "Grave of the Emperor's former teacher," Chuaning. It's interesting, these are the kinds of things that you would have expected to learn in the first volume, because they're so telling of what we know of Moran of today. Oh no, we're pushing through. I'm not. We are not going 3 hours. I cannot deal. But these words seemed laughably pathetic, as if he were a pining, bitter widow. It would look ridiculous. He spent a long time in contemplation, with Bugwe held aloft before he had a flash of inspiration, an idea both discreet and intimate. Chuckling to himself, he scraped his blade across the stone. Grave of Consort Chu. So he couldn't even give Chuaning his name back in death. That's kind like. Why does that get under my skin so much? One thing I wanted to mention is I still can't remember if we've gotten an explanation of why Chuaning is so affected by Bugwe. If we have, feel free to remind me. If we haven't, please don't spoil. But yeah. He felt as if a great weight had been lifted off his chest, yet those 4 words still felt insufficient. He remembered Chuaning's lofty, arrogant mien, those eyes that rarely deigned to meet his own. Irritation and fondness bloomed in his heart. He'd never seen that kind of expression on Chuaning's face again. Well then, Tashin Jin would simply end up as his bitter, pining widow, he thought maliciously. Chuaning had abandoned him, leaving him to live on alone. How heartless was this man to use his own death as his last revenge. It was too much. He glared, stewing in resentment until his eyes were bloodshot. It was just too much. No, he resolved to disgrace and bully Chuaning one last time. He refused to let him shut his eyes without regret in the underworld. A century later, when Moran entered hell himself, he wanted to be able to point and laugh at Chuaning, to taunt the man clad in white. You lost, and I won. See? You're dead, but I still humiliated you. Holding his blade, Tashin Jin remained in thought in front of the grave until the sun disappeared and the curtain of evening fell, until darkness descended and the crescent moon winked down from on high. Surrounded by watery moonlight like frost, like the whisper of white robes, Moran, at long last, lifted Bugwe and carved 2 more words into the gravestone. Grave of the esteemed Consort Chu. Dust trickled softly down the stone. Cheeks propped in hand, he sank into giggles. What a wonderful title, he thought. With this, it was clear to all that Chuaning belonged to him. Only Chuaning would have known there was no esteem in the title at all. Perfect. Now, if only Chuaning's rage could bring him back to life, that would be even better. Heart brimming with anticipation, eyes flashing brightly, he cheerfully ran over to the Red Lotus Pavilion. Chuaning's temper was awful. How could he bear such humiliation? He might as well wake up, Moran thought. Then they could have another duel, another test of mettle. This time, when he saw Chuaning struggling with his injuries, he would allow him to move. How, even 10 moves? He'd be willing to entertain it. Oh, he is fully going around the bend right now. So long as he woke up. He stood next to the lotus pond, gazing at that unmarred body. This venerable one's already allowing allowed you 10 moves. Be reasonable now. Don't you see the tombstone this venerable one raised for you? Aren't you mad? Don't you want to grab me by the collar and scream at me? You were always so attached to your lofty reputation. Now all that's left is that ridiculous line. Grave of the esteemed consort Shu. Wake up. Wake up. His face went from placid to livid with rage. But still Chuaning lay there, unspeaking, unmoving. Only after a long, long time did Moran finally understand that he'd gotten what he'd always thought he wanted. Chuaning's obedience. Oh! Expecting him to say Chuaning's death and for that to hurt? Why does the fact that it's not death but obedience and it hurts more? Why does it hurt more? Why does it hurt more? Give me another sip of bitter tea. I might choke on it at this point. Like, here's Shizun, his mortal enemy, his companion in bed, his Chuaning. Finally, he wouldn't talk back. In the silent, cold cave on Dragonblood Mountain, Ran embraced his wounded lover. Neither of them spoke. Moran suddenly recalled that rainy night they'd spent at the inn in Wuchan town. The man in his arms had been so uncertain yet so eager as he touched him, his ears bright red as he quietly asked Moran if it felt good. I am not... I'm not about to cry over a frickin' sex scene. Well, the lack of one, shall we say. Back then, he'd vowed to himself never to hurt Chuaning in this lifetime. Not in the slightest measure. He'd wanted to take it slow, to stroke the flames bit by bit. He wanted to let Chuaning gradually become comfortable with him before ultimately making him shudder with the ecstasy of their joining body and soul. He'd made many plans, come up with many ideas. He'd imagined countless times what their first real union would look like, when and where it would be, whether the sky would be aglow with rosy sunsets or spangled with brilliant stars, whether high-tongue or apricot petals would float by outside the window. He never thought it would be like this. For the first time in this life, he would let their desire and flesh become one, would be such an absurd, painful, and deranged affair. You can thank your author for that, because none of the audience wanted it. Both of them were deeply weary. As Moran lay next to Chuaning, he felt a strange fluttering in his chest, as though some pure white object was trembling mightily in his heart. Pure white object. We're not talking about a white chess piece here. We're not, that's not it, right? That's not it. It's not it. I'm paranoid right now, which is why that was my first thought. Please let it be something that is not more painful. That object broke free with a great rumble, like a towering tree pulled up by its roots. That pristine whiteness seemed to be wrapped around something filthy and sinister, both struggling outward, one white, one black, bursting from his chest with all speed. He didn't know what they were, but he had no thought to spare for it because Chuaning had said, "Pull out first." He didn't reply, he didn't know what to say. Without a word, he repressed the agony in his chest, slowly gathered the clothes that littered. Okay, so I think it was a metaphorical something. Thank goodness. Because we do not need anything else happening right now. He slowly gathered the clothes that littered the ground and silently helped Chuaning dress. It took a very long time because he didn't dare touch Chuaning below the waist. Those purpling bruises were indisputable evidence of what he'd done, with the pain Chuaning was experiencing. nor did he dare look at Chuaning's face. What would he find in those eyes right now? Disappointment? Anger? Isolation? What I'm scared of seeing is disassociation. Moran couldn't continue the thought. Finally, Chuaning's robes were on again. Moran's headache worsened, and he was drenched in cold sweat. He thought maybe his discomfort was related to whatever had escaped from his heart. Okay, so it is physical? Enduring the pain, he wrapped his fingers around Chuaning's ice-cold hand. He couldn't summon the courage to look at Chuaning's face, so he merely stared at his fingers. Finally asked in a small voice, Shizun, do you remember everything? Moran's mind stalled. His face went blank, like an abandoned nut that had lost its home. After staring off into space for a long beat, he closed his eyes. He'd always feared something like this would happen, but now that his trial was imminent, he discovered, much to his surprise, that he felt calm and at peace, like an anxious fugitive led to the prison at last. He stood in his cheerless cell and looked around. Everything he dreaded, all those nightmares he'd run from, they all materialized into this new reality. But the shoe had finally dropped. While he was fleeing death, he'd never spent a single peaceful night, but now that all the walls had closed around him, he could finally sleep soundly. There was no more need to run. There was no more hope, no more fear. Only relief. Many things still aren't clear to me. Whether from screaming or the heaviness of his new memories, Chuaning's voice was hoarse and his complexion even worse than Moran's. It's all a mess. Moran screwed up his courage and touched Chuaning's bone-white cheek with his fingers, that trembled terribly. Moran, Chuaning murmured vacantly. Emperor Tashinjin. Moran waited numbly for him to continue, but Chuaning closed his eyes, lashes trembling, a deep furrow between his brows. Don't think about all of that right now. Eyes red-rimmed, Moran ran his fingers down Chuaning's face, stroking the wisps of hair at his temples. Don't you want to sleep? I'll stay with you. I don't think he wants sleep right now. As tired as he is, I think he would rather pass out unwillingly than willingly go to sleep right now. I mean, that maybe I'm just projecting. A shiver ran through Chuaning. Moran felt like a knife was twisting in his heart. Shizun, don't be scared. It's me, not Tashinjin. I'll never hurt you again, not ever. Chuaning's eyes fluttered open slightly, dewy wetness glimmering beneath sooty lashes. Moran thought he would speak, but after a moment, no sound made it past his lips. Chuaning merely closed his eyes again and turned his face aside, his shoulders hunching unconsciously. Shizun, I want to ask you something, and I am terribly afraid of what he's about to ask. Moran remained silent, waiting. If you'd found out earlier that the person who gave you on the outside of a temple was me, Chuaning sounded bone-weary, would you have spared me all those years in Wushan Palace? The question cut straight to the quick of Moran's heart. He knew Chuaning already knew. And the sad thing is, I don't think there's a right answer to this. Because it means that what Chuaning did as Chuaning was not enough to spare him. Now, granted, there were a lot of misunderstandings between them, but it doesn't justify what Moran did to him or anyone. And I don't think the idea that you would be spared because of kindness that you did as a kid is a comforting one. Chuaning already knew, but of course he did. When Moran had searched so obsessively for his savior Gogo in the past lifetime, Chuaning had been right there in the palace. He must have known. Chuaning had seen it all in the past life, but he'd never said anything. In all those years they'd spent together, Chuaning had never told him the truth. It wasn't until today that the accumulated weight of his suffering finally crushed him. Moran began to tremble all over. He felt a lump in his throat, and he didn't know how to answer. He reached up. He only wanted to put an arm around Chuaning, but the instant he touched his shoulder, he could feel it shaking. Chuaning was crying. Moran knew he didn't want him to see. After a while, Moran couldn't bear the discomfort. He still didn't know why the past life Chuaning had devised such an illusion, but he could no longer ignore the strange sensation in his chest. Looking down, he discovered with a start that a delicate tendril of smoke was floating out of his chest and into Chuaning's. It was so gossamer pale he hadn't noticed it before. Upon closer examination, he found that the smoke was black one moment, white the next, flowing without cease from his heart to Chuaning. What was this? Black smoke was dissipating from Chuaning's body as well. Gathering into a clump of darkness, it was drawn into the center nearby. What on earth? He turned to warn Chuaning, only to discover he had fallen unconscious again. The accumulated memories of his past lifetime was too heavy a burden to bear. They'd arrived in a disordered heap, and Chuaning's mind was scrambling to sort and reorganize them. I mean, and he just had a freaking emotional situation even before this disaster. Shizun. It hurt. Why did it hurt so much? He felt there was a tug of war within his heart. One side black, the other white. One side pure, the other filthy. Dark brows knitted, Moran struggled to his feet and made his way over to the censer. He lifted the lid with shaking fingers. Inside was the dark chi that had seeped out of his chest. It had coalesced into the shape of a black, lushy, petaled flower. Moran took one look at it before his vision went dark, and he knew no more. Please let someone not have followed them. But also, low-key glad, and I'm sorry to say it, but let me just finish the sentence first before you judge me too much. Low-key glad Huajue died, because could you imagine him, like, accompanying them into the cave and then that happens in front of him? Like, if this vision doesn't kill Chuaning, that would have. Okay. We're done. I want to say we survived, but like I'm still kind of trying to see if I really did. I can't help but wonder if this somehow has something to do with um the way we saw Moran's soul be judged as absolutely horrible and then absolutely pure all at the same time in the underworld. and as I was reading that, what really frustrates me is that I unfortunately can kind of guess why the Chuaning of the different timeline would think that he has no choice but to force a union between Moran and this Chuaning, because things turned out so differently in this timeline and he couldn't have known it. From his experience, everything went horribly. So why would he think and assume that they would have naturally come to a point where they would sleep together of their own volition and then have Chuaning's memories restored? Low key though, like, as much as I think that you could you could in universe justify why the scene exists, I don't think this is unjustifiable, writing wise. But I would have so much preferred, I really would have so much preferred a very sweet, wonderful first time, and then the fallout of Chuaning getting his memories because of that first time, because at least then, there would have not been rape involved. Sure, there would have been a lot of betrayal, but we got the betrayal in any case. We might as well not have had the rape, Just a thought, just a writer's note for future, meat bun works, in case she's listening, which she obviously is not. Okay. I am sorry you guys had to experience that, and I am very sorry that I had to experience that. And needless to say, I'm very excited to be going on to a very light fish book next week. Yeah, it's like, there is this practice in writing that I think most people are familiar with, where it's like everything that can go wrong should go wrong. Meat Bun takes that, and then she runs 10 miles with it. She does not wait. She does not hesitate. She just murders and expects us to survive it. So anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed that. I don't know. That doesn't feel like the right thing to say. I hope you guys survived that. Let's say that instead. And I will see you guys next week for volume 3 of Disabled Tyrant's Beloved Bedfish. I have never been so excited to read a happy book in my life. I will see you then.